Hey guys, Kurt from Time Machine Transport. Beautiful day here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, at my mother-in-law's place, about to do some work. But I just wanted to do a video on well, first off, a lot of preppers that are coming out, and don't say always and never, right? Jason Gilbert, right? Pastor Rick, Stevie K, all you guys, Bob Crum, all you guys, I love you guys. It's interesting. Well, I use interesting a lot, right? It's funny to me that preppers on their channels, you know, they've been on, you know, YouTube forever, and the constant message that in my opinion, is, you know, world coming to an end, war. Everybody's beating the war drums, right? And then when something like this in Israel happens, you know, I told you it was coming to the Middle East. I told you, well, yeah, I mean, years and years and years, these guys and gals are saying that, you know, this stuff's coming right away, whatever the case is. Hello. I'm going to have your door fixed for you today. Sure, not a problem. I'll be here all day. So. Okay. So the thing is this. I keep telling these guys and gals on YouTube comments, I keep telling them that there's no way there's no way Israel's going into Gaza. Absolutely no way. No way. If you're part of my channel, you know I'm a veteran. I was in an airborne unit over in Vicenza, Italy, the Airborne Battalion combat team. I'm not a military tactician or statistician. I don't know. Anyways, I'm not that guy. So, and there's the but. Israel is not going into Gaza. No way, no way, no way. So the reason why they push the Palestinian people in Gaza down to the southern Egyptian border, like south of that river, is because I'm sure, I'll get into a bunch of stuff here. So I'm sure that Israel and the U.S. and UK and France, I mean, all these countries are having these civil unrests, whether you support the Israelis or the Palestinians. And I have friends that are Palestinian Jews, and so I'm neutral on the whole thing. But I feel bad for the Israeli people, I truly do, and the Palestinian people. But they still had no right. Hamas had no right to go in there and target civilians and children and elderly. I think that's pathetic. But I also don't live there. I don't know what's going on. So there's no way Gaza's going to be, that Israel's going to go into Gaza. There's no way. First off, they've already gotten so much backlash from doing what they're doing in Gaza. I mean, they definitely have the right to defend themselves as U.S., as me as a citizen and veteran. I have a right to defend myself, my wife, everybody does, right? And I told my wife, I'm like, you know, if that would have happened in our neighborhood, I would want exactly what had happened in our neighborhood to happen to the people that brought that onto our neighborhood. That's me. I think that's just human nature, that we want revenge, and we want it in a worse way, right? So, but I'm not justifying either side's actions. So I'm sure that Israel and the UK and the US and anybody who backs Israel is getting a lot of backlash from the atrocities. Well, not the atrocities. Well, I guess it could be atrocities that are happening in Gaza right now, and rightfully so, right? I mean, but still, you're killing innocents, which I don't agree with. So, but they have to retaliate, right? Because here's the thing. so they if they're getting all this backlash and from the UN and from other countries and so on and so on, they have to if they once they bomb, so they had to push all the Palestinians back. They had to get them out, even though Hamas is preventing people from leaving, they say, the Gaza Strip. We don't know what to believe, really, especially if the mainstream media is telling us what's going on. It's happening, but I'm sure it's also the opposite, right? So I don't trust the mainstream media. They have their own agendas, their own MO, and so on and so on. So I think that they're they gave the Palestinian people 24 hours to move south and get out of Gaza, right? So they needed to do that to kind of absorb or cushion themselves as far as more casualties, civilian casualties, and children, which is horrible. But again, that's this whole war thing it's just a bunch of propaganda, if you ask me. Well, you're not asking me, I'm telling you my opinion. It's a bunch of propaganda because and it's chest thumping, right? So they all these countries, including Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, of course the Palestinians and Egypt, they're all chest thumping. So they're all saying, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. This is our red line, so on and so on. Like, this is what we're going to do. So they have troops present. They have tanks present. They have aircraft carriers and strike groups present. They have, flight operations going on present. I mean, just moving howitzers and tanks and artillery, everything. So it's all chest thumping. And so they're all telling each other, and they're telling their constituents, because war brings people together. Look what happened on 9/11. I mean, that's been 22 years ago. And what happened right after that? Like, the U.S. was like this. I mean, they separated us, and then they brought us together for, because, and I truly believe that our government had something to do with 9/11, but that's neither here nor there. And I truly believe that's why Israel keeps referring to this attack as their 9/11 and their Pearl Harbor. So again, it's all in your face, right? So they can't go into Gaza. They cannot. It's a suicide mission. So they push all the Palestinian people back, and they go in there and they just pummel Gaza, right? They just level it. And a lot of these sources are saying that the Gazan or the Hamas tunnels are so deep, like, even if they've gone in there in the past with like bunker busters and they didn't even reach the tunnels. That's what they're saying. I don't know for fact, obviously. But so there's no way they're going in. There's just no way. They can't. It would be a suicide mission with all the booby traps, all the all the resistance they're going to gain, and it's urban warfare. So if you can avoid an urban warfare situation, you're as a country, you're going to avoid that. Why? Because you're going to have loss of troops, and a lot of, I don't know about a lot of people, but I'm sure there's quite a few people that don't know that all Israelis that turn 18 have to do a stint in the military. 2 years for women and 3 years for men. So when you're 18, you're woman or man, you still have to do your stint in the military. I don't know how long that's been in place, but I'm sure it's been in place maybe since, I wouldn't say day one, but who knows? So a lot of people don't realize it. So you have 8 million people in Israel that all have, well, not, I don't know about all, but a great majority of them have served in the Israeli military. So they not only, have their strong military, strong Air Force, pretty strong Navy, I would assume, but their military, I mean, they're one of the strongest in the world. Not the biggest, not one of the biggest, but one of the strongest. And their Mossad they have like the best intelligence in the entire world. Like, U.S. gets intel from Israel, and a lot of other countries do as well. They're like I wouldn't say the peacekeepers, because Palestinian friends of mine tell me the atrocities that the Israeli government has put on the Palestinians and vice versa. So, I'm not siding with either one. I'm neutral, like I said. So Israel looks at it as like, okay, we have a military of...
New text message from baby girl.
You have, my baby girl, I love you. So you have military capable people, right? I don't know the percentage of elderly people as opposed to young age males, or military fighting age males, and military fighting age women. They do actually have women that are paratroopers as well, which I was pretty surprised on. So if you're in an airborne unit, like you're combat ready. At least we were, and I'm sure, and a lot of paratrooper countries, or a lot of countries that we trained with there, because we were part of NATO. A lot of the other countries, if you're in an airborne unit, you're a combat ready person, soldier, Marine, whatever, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, whatever. So like I said, they're not going into Gaza. So get that out of your mind. They can't, because of the booby traps, the resistance. It's urban warfare. And also, when they go in and they just keep bombing this place, what do you think's going to happen? All this rubble gets over everywhere. And it's just constant up and down, and you can booby trap anything. And really, in that situation, you really don't, urban warfare, you can go house to house or building to building, structure to structure, whatever the case is. But you don't, if you have no cover besides some mounds of rock and debris, it's not as good as, as a standing structure. Where's your cover, right? So they're not going into Gaza. They're not. They will take too many casualties. And yeah, they have, 360,000 reservists right now. People make fun of the reservists, like, oh, they're reserves, but they're still boots on the ground, right? So don't look for, I hear all these prepping channels. They're going into Gaza. They're going into Gaza. You hear the news outlets, Israel preparing to go into Gaza. Well, our military and their military, any military for that fact, is not going to go in and say, this is what we're going to do. Why would you do that? That's like basically giving your play calls to the other team in a football game or a basketball team or whatever, or you're giving the other team your call signs for your batters and your pitchers. Why would you do that? It would be absolutely asinine. So it's people like, oh, well, that's what they're saying on the news, and that's what that's what you're hearing, because they want you to hear that. Why do you think when an airplane goes in the sky, it's got a transponder on for tracking, right? The military, when they're doing something that they don't want you to know, what do they do? They turn the transponders off, right? And then you're like, oh, why'd they do that? Because they're doing something that they don't want us to know. These people that are saying like, oh, that's what they're saying on news, man. You should always be prepared. Family and friends watch this channel, co-workers, and work colleagues, stuff like that. Hey, Gene from Legal Shield, how you doing, buddy? Anyways, they're not going to tell you what they're going to do. So these prepping channels that like New York Prepper, the guy's an idiot. He reads regular news articles, and of course I'm just speculating, right? But I have the experience and the know-how, and I pay attention. Like when the Ukraine thing was going on, people were like, oh, they're not going into Ukraine because, or Russia's not going into Ukraine because they got the backing of NATO, and Ukraine's got the biggest military in Europe, and the strongest or one of the strongest, or whatever the case is. And I said, they are going to go into Ukraine. They have to go into Ukraine. This conflict and the Ukrainian-Russia conflict, they're not even close. This right here, what's going on now, is going to be really bad. It's going to get really bad. And the reason, so back to the Ukraine thing, I told people that there's no way Russia's going to sit there and chest thump and look like idiots, by all the preparing and all the drills, as they called it, all this stuff. But they didn't cut off the power. And I did a video on that, I don't know, months and months ago, maybe a year ago, where I said that in our unit or in any military unit, if you're going to lay siege onto a city or onto a certain area, you're not going to let them have power. You're not going to let them have water. You're not going to let them have food. You're not going to let them have fuel, period. And I put a video out on that, and you can go back in my videos. I said that Russia is going into Ukraine. They're not going to sit there and chest thump, but they're also not going to want to look like savages, because if they did, they would have cut off. They would have went in there and just surrounded Kiev, the capital, and they just would have bombarded it with artillery, tank rounds, and they would have cut off all the power, all the water, not allowed fuel in there, not allowed all this aid that they got, right? And now it's a completely different story, because now you don't even hear about Ukraine, right? So trust me when I say this. They're not going into Gaza. Yeah, they might send tier 1 guys in there. They maybe to, do some reconning and find out this and that or whatever the case is. But the U.S. doesn't want to lose troops, and Israel definitely doesn't want to lose troops, right? I mean, right now, as it is, they've already lost, enough people, but they're not gonna. Why would you go into a place if you don't need to, right? So you have, say you have 1 million troops, right? And then you have the military capable citizens of Israel that have, a large percentage of them have gone into the military, mandatory when you turn 18, like I said. And so you can't risk those people. If you go into Gaza, that's complete suicide, because you're going to be getting it from Hamas and maybe Egypt. Also in the north, you got Lebanon, you got Hezbollah, you got Syria, you got Iran. Even though it's a country over, logistically that's a very difficult thing to do, is to go to war with Iran. There's this, logistically you can't. I mean, it's just that also, like, where are you going to refuel the planes? You're going to have all these troops, or what? How are you going to get them over there? But Iran is very strong, and I think Israel. So without the U.S. and U.K. and all this support that Israel's getting, Israel would more than likely lose this battle, this war. So they need to have allies, right? Well, if the U.S. is like, hey, man, you can't go into Gaza, they're going to listen more than likely, I would imagine, say, okay, yeah, because like I said, they're already getting a lot of backlash on the casualties that they've put upon the Palestinian people. So, and also they're looking at they also have their best interests at heart as well, for not losing troops, right? So look for that definitely not to happen. They're gonna, once they get the red light, or the green light, excuse me, and they get the support that they need, they're just going to level Gaza, man. They're going to level it. And then you might see something go in there, weeks from now or months from now. But I don't think you're even going to see it then. You might have to, I mean, that's why you have drones. That's why you have a strong Air Force and so on and so on. And that's why, like, the same thing that happened in all these other wars, you go in there and you just strike the shit out of them, right? By the air, by sea, and that's it. So, and then also, these prepping channels that, just read articles like New York Prepper and Full Spectrum News, and I wouldn't say Canadian Prepper too much, but these guys, they don't have any military experience. And I'm not saying that I got a shit ton of military experience, but I still talk to people in the military, and I still know, it's kind of obvious. So, like I said, they're not going to tell you everything they're doing. And this whole thing is chest thumping, and it's propaganda. So just to show the U.S. cannot back down. They cannot back down. especially with everything that's happening in Ukraine right now and Russia and Putin going over to, Putin's meeting with Egypt, Syria, Iran, Lebanon officials, Jordan, I believe. So he's meeting or has met with all these military leaders in these countries. They're not going to put it over the wire because that kind of stuff can be, intercepted or whatever. So they got to do face-to-faces, right? And then tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow, he goes over to China and sees Xi Jinping to talk about this. And then Biden's supposed to be going over to Israel, and people say, these prepping channels, he's going over there or he's not going over there. And then when he goes over there, they'll say, see, I told you he went over there. And then when he doesn't go over there, see, I told you he wasn't going over there. So they're always playing both sides of the fence, right? Like I got balls, and I'm going to say, yeah, you're not going into Gaza. And like I said, I'm not patting myself on the back and, oh, Kurt, you're right or what. Who wants to be right on this shit? It just makes sense. So you have U.S. and its allies and, NATO, of course, supporting Ukraine, and they need to stand their ground, right? Well, what do you think's going to happen here? The U.S. people are like, oh, the U.S. is afraid. It's heeding the warning of Iran and all these other countries. Well, maybe they are, but they can't back down. They just cannot back down. If they back down, they will be looked at as very, very weak, and we can't have that because we already have a weak administration. So they can't have that to boot, like knowing for a fact that the administration is weak, not just assuming or speculating. Well, they're probably, no, but if the U.S. backs down, we're done. And the U.S. has to go in there to support Israel because Israel is kind of like, even though people disagree or whatever, but in my opinion, Israel's like the peacekeeper of the Middle East, right? They supposedly have nuclear weapons, right? So if Israel didn't respond to this, they would just be walked on by all these Muslim countries. So Israel had to do something, and Israel cannot back down. They cannot back down. So if somebody throws a rock at them, they're going to throw two, right? Somebody throws 2 rocks, they're going to throw 6, okay? They have to, or they're going to be deemed weak and afraid, right? They can't have that. And the U.S. needs to back them because we give them so much military assets, billions upon, I think it's almost $300 billion since like World War II that we've given to Israel. But what has Israel given us in return is the question, right? And then also, and another thing, the U.S. made it public knowledge that the Marines are handpicking 2,000 Marines to send over to the Mediterranean. So I'm going to tell you, if I'm a military and you're a military, I'm going to tell you, hey, we're handpicking 2,000. What is 2,000 Marines going to, I'm not banging on Marines, of course, but what would 2,000 just paratroopers do? What would 2,000 just Rangers do? What would, and if you had 2,000 Tier 1 guys, completely different story, I would assume. But what are 2,000 extra Marines going to do? My opinion, I'm going to tell you my opinion, but you don't want to hear that. My guess is they are handpicking. Because remember I told you everything that they tell us is so in our face. Like, look what we're doing to you people. And we're going to get away with it. But yet we're putting it right in your face. This is what we're going to do. And then when it happens, people are like, oh my God, I didn't see that. Yeah, they're telling you it's going to happen. So we are definitely going to war. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. We are going to war. Everything that's come. Okay, so let's get back to I know I jump around a lot. I apologize. So let's get back to the 2,000 Marines. That 2,000 is going to do nothing. Why would you publicly tell everybody that you're handpicking 2,000 Marines? My opinion is, guess and an opinion are two different things, I believe, right? But in my opinion, I believe that they're so in our face. They're like, yeah, we're handpicking 2,000 Marines. So in when somebody would tell me that, like I'm handpicking 2,000 apples. You're saying, damn, you're handpicking the best apples for me, right? That's what we assume. That's what I assume. But I don't think that's the case. I think they're handpicking 2,000 of their worst Marines that are expendable. And then they're going to place those 2,000 handpicked expendables, and they're going to place them, and they're going to bring them over there, and look for something to happen that they are either on a ship. And here's another thing. So I did a video on before the Eisenhower even went there. I think it's en route now. And the Gerald Ford is there right now, but the Eisenhower, the Dwight D. Eisenhower's en route. Is it en route or en route? It's kind of like washer or washer, tomato. So anyways, oh shit, my father-in-law is here. So anyways, if you have, I just lost my train of thought because I know he's going to come over here and talk. So if you handpick these 2,000, look for this to happen. They're going to be placed on a ship, and let's get back to the Eisenhower. So the Dwight D. Eisenhower is, I believe, the oldest aircraft carrier that the Navy has. It's like the oldest aircraft carrier that it has. Okay, and so you wouldn't give up. You wouldn't have something happen to your most expensive aircraft carrier.
New text
right?
message from baby girl.
You wouldn't set up a scenario or a situation or even risk, right? It's like chess, right? You're not gonna if you put the king out there, you're gonna lose, right? You put the queen out there, that's a very, very important piece that you need on the chessboard. So you can't have that. All right, Pop. You can't give up the queen, but you can give up the pawns and maybe a knight or a bishop, right? But you can't give up the queen and the king and the castles, you know what I'm saying? So look for these 20 or these 2,000 expendables to be on an old ship like the Eisenhower or something of that nature. And then I heard something about the aircraft carrier, the Washington, going over there, but it's like, so people don't know this, but when an aircraft, I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, but I've heard other Navy people that talk about how an aircraft leaves its port or its base, the planes then land, the fighter jets then land on the aircraft carrier, and then they do flight maneuvers off of the coast of wherever they're based out of. I don't know if it's 500 miles, 100 miles, international waters, U.S. I don't know that. But then I've heard that what they do is after their flight maneuvers and they're practicing or they're training, then they put them back on board, and then they chain them down, and then off to their deployment area they go. Well, they said that this one, and I'm getting this from New York, the New York prepper guy, where he said that the Washington left its port empty. And I'm like, well, yeah, I believe they all leave empty. If you're in the Navy or whatever and I'm wrong, please let me know. But from what I've heard from other naval people is that that's what they do. So did the Washington leave empty and just crew on board, and then they're going to land the fighter planes on there and then chain them down and go over to the Mediterranean? Or is it going empty completely so that the U.S. doesn't lose high-price billion-dollar jets, right? And whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, now if the Washington goes over there and it does have fighter jets on it and so on, then that's a different story. But if the Washington goes over there empty and you have less stuff on board, and then you put these 2,000 expendables on there, and then you sink that ship, even though they don't mean to kill, well, I don't know, look at Benghazi and all these other conflicts, but even though, the intention probably isn't to take those people's lives, it's the whole show. Just like, Pearl Harbor, we didn't need to go into that, we needed to go into the conflict, in my opinion, but we didn't, when Pearl Harbor happened, I mean, they lost thousands of military's casualties. So anyways, my thought on that is those 2,000 hand-picked people are not going to be their best. And like I said, you want to send them in because you know that you need this to happen, just like 9/11, right? You needed that to happen. Who would have thought that these two buildings would have fell? Now, everybody's got their different opinions on that. Not everybody, but there's more and more people coming out of the woodwork saying, yeah, I truly believe that our country had something to do with that. So who would imagine these two huge buildings crashing down? Well, if they're capable of doing that, do you not think they're capable of sinking an old aircraft carrier with 2,000 expendable Marines? Yeah. Kurt, you're crazy, man. That's nuts. If you think about it, it's really not that crazy. It's not that nuts. It makes all the sense in the world, right? Because the U.S. needs to be in this conflict. And here's another thing, so you're talking about, the economy right now. I mean, they're talking about how the U.S. dollar's just tanked, right? That the Fed is just in all this trouble. Banks are in all this trouble. All these things are happening. Unemployment's on the rise, strikes, less job. You know what I'm saying? Like, this country's hurting along with a lot of other economies, right? Well, what they say is war are money machines. So the war won, just like 9/11, brings people together. This administration right now is probably one of the worst in history. So what do you need, especially when an election year coming up, which I don't think we're having an election. I'll say for a fact we're not going to have an election this 2024 ain't going to happen. So this administration needs us to go to war to bring the people together, back this administration, and that will, like, that's what they need. And the American dollar, or they need to hide what's going on. War, just like the other building that fell during 9/11, the one with all the documents, when Donald Rumsfeld came on national television the day before 9/11 and said we're missing $2.3 trillion. Then 9/11 happens the next day. Well, this other Fed building just fell, like it imploded on itself, which is interesting. And that's where all the records were that were holding the information. That's where all the trillions of dollars, which ended up being like $8 or $9 trillion at the end, as they added everything up. And they also, something with the Pentagon was, the computers that were there. So who knows? I mean, like I said, we'll never know. But that's my point. So they need to hide everything, with obviously hiding from Biden. They need to get rid of all that. And they can't reelect Trump, or what I'm saying, it just ain't gonna happen. It's just one of those things. So just really look at this with an open mind, and just think about things. Please stop believing everything that these prepping channels are telling you. You should be prepared either way. You should have, those things, and the things that go in the things, and food and water. I mean, you should have all this stuff, man. Extra fuel, because if this does happen, and there's so many scenarios you can have in this thing. Biden going over. You got Putin going over, Xi Jinping. You got and then you got Biden going to the Middle East, and all this stuff. It's like, is that going to end him? Because they need to have a fall guy for everything. Oh, it's Biden's fault. And you see him falling and mumbling and stumbling during his speeches, and he's just gone, right? So did they just say, well, this dude's, he's expendable too. So you send him over somewhere and he gets clipped, right? Pretty far-fetched on that, but So is 9/11. That was very far fetched. Oklahoma City bombing, that was very far fetched. Look at this stuff. If you're and please comment on my channel because I like to debate people. And if you think, hey Kurt, this is put it down, please. Don't just say, oh, you're fucking crazy, and you don't know what you're talking about. Give me a reason why. What's your opinion? What do you say? If you know what I'm saying, like, call me out and I'll call you out. And before you open your mouth, look at some other facts and other ideas, right? Don't just go with the one narrative that a lying government tells you and says, oh, well, this is the way it went down. How do you know? How do you know for a fact? You know what I'm saying? I don't know for a fact, but I'm just giving other scenarios, so is this also, and here's another thing with the people that were coming across our southern border. They just caught two, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago, they caught 2 Lebanese guys coming over the border, which is interesting to me that you're going to pinpoint 2 Lebanese coming over the border, but you can't catch all the other. That's just crazy to me. So, they said that there's been over 1 million people in this administration that's come over that border. Well, that also is very interesting because as you're hearing more and more and more and more on the news about, have better security, awareness, and look for, this to happen and this to happen again, right in your face, right? Right in your face. And all this stuff. And then, like I said, Rumsfeld, day before 9/11, 2.3 trillion in your face, right? And if they're saying, oh, be on the lookout for terrorists and be on the lookout for this and be on the lookout for that. And then, by the way, we caught 2 Lebanese people coming over the border that were people of interest. And then there was another 1,000 something that came over the night before that they'd have no idea where they went. So they're right in your face. They're prepping us for something that's going to happen. So then when it does happen, they're going to say, see, we told you it wasn't us, it's them. And again, this administration will be blamed for that, right? Or they'll say Trump, he spent all of his millions or billions to have these people come across the border, right? But anyways, I just think it's very interesting how everything is so in our face and people are just buying it at face value saying, that's true. Well, how do you know it's true, right? Start thinking about this stuff, man. Start being prepared, because if you're not, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. This is happening. And obviously nobody knows when it's going to happen, but it's happening. I'm not saying on this channel, I'm not a 100% prepping channel or anything, but I am a prepared person. I am a prepper. And more of my friends and family are listening to it. So I don't know if they're actually doing anything about it. I know some other guys are, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it's coming very, very soon. Like I said, the U.S. cannot back down. Israel cannot back down. Iran is not going to back down. Hamas won't back down. Hezbollah won't back down. Egypt definitely won't back down. So, and now and other thing, by the way, Turkey, which has always been, well, again, don't say always, for the most part has been very, very difficult with NATO. And, they still sell stuff to the Russians and to Iran and all this stuff. So, as I'm sure the U.S. does, right? So, but Turkey is more vocal about them not agreeing, and yeah, we are going to do this stuff even though we are in NATO. Now they're saying that they're sending a bunch of ships over to the Mediterranean as well. And Turkey is basically backing Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas because they're Muslim, right? And then Antony Blinken, he went over to Israel and he started talking about, I'm here as a Jew, blah, blah, blah. And Erdogan, people say it's Erdogan or Erdogan, for the president of Turkey. I believe it's Erdogan, but a lot of people say Erdogan. I could be wrong. But he came out and said, well, I am here because I am Muslim. So that was pretty bold words, basically challenging. But Turkey's going to be on, even though they're part of NATO. And I've said this a while back, that Turkey's been a problem child for NATO. I think they're in the whole Ukraine thing, but Turkey's been a problem child for NATO, and they have like the best drones. They have a shit ton of them. So, anyways, that's what's going to happen. But Turkey's going to be joining those guys. I truly believe that. So, anyways, I'm done babbling. I got to get to work here. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Ciao.